Welcome back to The Explainer. So glad you're joining us today. We are jumping right in. Today, we're unpacking part 4 of our critique series, and we're zeroing in on the incredibly high-stakes intersection of autonomous AI and legal liability. We're going to really dig into the legal and ethical fallout of what happens when we take humans completely out of the loop, and, more importantly, what that means for the people left standing when things inevitably break down. So think about this. Can a company actually be sued by its own chatbot? Or, I guess more accurately, can a company be held legally liable for the imagination of its own AI? I mean, it sounds like some wild sci-fi thought experiment, right? But in 2024, a legal precedent was set that literally changed corporate accountability in the AI era forever. We're going to dive into a case that fundamentally shifted the web. But to really grasp the massive systemic issues at play here, we first need to look at the very relatable, very human story at the center of it all. Section 1. The chatbot that went rogue. All right, let's meet Jake Moffat. Back in late 2022, sadly, Jake's grandmother passed away. So Jake goes onto Air Canada's website looking to book a last-minute flight, and he asks their customer support chatbot about bereavement fares. Well, the chatbot gives Jake a very specific, very comforting, and authoritative-sounding instruction. It tells him, hey, go ahead and book the full price now, and you can just apply for a bereavement refund within 90 days. So Jake trusts the bot, he books the flight, and he flies. But when he actually tries to claim that refund later, Air Canada's real-world policy was entirely different. Turns out, bereavement rates absolutely could not be claimed retroactively. Customer service basically just said, yeah, the bot made a mistake, we're not honoring that. But Jake didn't let it go. He took them to a civil resolution tribunal, and in February 2024, the tribunal ruled completely in his favor. Fast forward to April, and wouldn't you know it, Air Canada's chatbot had quietly vanished from their website. Now, here's where it gets absolutely absurd. Air Canada's actual defense in court was to claim that the chatbot was, and this is a quote, an independent legal entity responsible for its own actions. Literally, they tried to treat their AI like a rogue independent contractor that they had absolutely no control over just to dodge liability. The tribunal officially called this a remarkable submission, which is basically judge speak for "you've got to be kidding me." The court didn't buy it for a second. They ruled that an airline is strictly responsible for all the information on its website, period. Whether it's a static page or a generative bot, the company is completely on the hook. Okay, so legally, they're liable. But let's pivot from the courtroom to the architecture for a second. Why exactly did this technical failure happen in the first place? Section 2. Anatomy of an AI failure. Now, the framing here is absolutely crucial. This was not an AI hallucination. We talk about hallucinations a lot. That's when an AI model just invents a fact out of thin air, right? Generating plausible but totally fictional text. But in this case, the model actually did exactly what it was supposed to do. The problem? It operated on a stale knowledge base. It retrieved an older, incorrect document about bereavement policies because the policy updates on the main website just never synced over to the chatbot's database. Industry experts call this context drift. The language model faithfully represented the broken context it was fed, so the AI didn't actually fail. The underlying data pipeline failed. And man, this brings us to a massive headache. The observability problem. Think about it. If Air Canada had the absolute best monitoring dashboards on the planet that day, what would they have seen? Green lights across the board. The bot responded normally, latency was perfectly fine, the user engaged and successfully booked a flight. 0 software exceptions were thrown. From the code's perspective, it successfully grabbed a document, built a grammatically correct sentence, and sent the message. Done. Traditional monitoring tools were completely blind to this disaster because every single technical metric looked perfectly healthy while the bot was simultaneously breaking the law and creating a huge liability. And this technical blind spot, it's a symptom of a much broader, much riskier industry trend, the race toward total automation. Section 3. Enter the Hootla era. So we're talking about the spectrum of human oversight here. On one side, we have HITL, human in the loop. This is managed risk. This is where a human operator's approval acts as a gate for the system's output. The human evaluates, validates, and authorizes the action before anything happens. On the other extreme, we have HOTL, human out of the loop. This is when an AI is fully autonomous. It's sensing, deciding, and acting with 0% human oversight in real time. Now, HOTL is incredibly alluring, right? It's built for speed, massive scale, and cutting costs. But as we're seeing, when you completely rip out that human circuit breaker, tiny technical errors instantly compound into real-world disasters. And look, the Air Canada incident isn't just some quirky one-off. It is a blazing warning sign of a massive systemic crisis across HTL deployments globally. Take the NYC My City chatbot. For months, It was confidently giving illegal minimum wage and tenant advice to small business owners. Or how about the DPD UK customer service trackbot? After a seemingly routine update accidentally bypassed its guardrails, it literally started cursing at customers and writing self-deprecating poetry about how useless the company was. We even see this in physical, real-world OTL systems, like the Waymo robotaxi incident that caused a recall of over 1,200 vehicles because the autonomous logic failed to predict a towed pickup truck, causing a crash. When you deploy these autonomous systems without any human oversight, you're basically deploying an unmanaged liability, which leads us to a really profound ethical theory. When these unmanaged, fully automated systems inevitably crash, who actually takes the blame?
Section 4. The Moral Crumple Zone.
This concept comes from the brilliant researcher Dr. Madeleine Claire Elish. Think about how a modern car is built for a second. The front end is deliberately designed as a crumple zone, right? It physically crushes to absorb the catastrophic force of a crash, all to protect the vulnerable humans inside the cabin. Well, Dr. Elish argues that in highly automated systems, this dynamic is completely reversed. The human operator essentially becomes the moral crumple zone. The frontline human absorbs the moral, psychological, and legal blame when the automated system inevitably fails. And why? To protect the perceived integrity of the tech itself, and by extension, the corporate creators behind it. And, this is a pattern we have seen over and over again throughout history. Dr. Elish points to some incredibly high-stakes cautionary tales. Take the partial nuclear meltdown at 3 Mile Island. When the plant's automated cooling system started failing, the control room was just flooded with hundreds of blaring, contradictory alarms. It completely overwhelmed the operators with a fundamentally broken user interface. Or look at the tragic crash of Air France Flight 447. The plane's speed sensors suddenly froze over, which instantly disengaged the autopilot right in the middle of a storm, handing chaotic, unmanaged control back to deeply confused pilots who had literal seconds to react. In these complex automated environments, when the system acts unexpectedly, post-incident investigations almost always oversimplify the narrative. We reflexively label it operator error or pilot error. It becomes this really convenient excuse to just blame the nearest human, rather than examining the fundamentally flawed, opaque automation that the human was desperately trying to supervise at the very last second.
So the really crucial point here is what we call the structural control defect. Basically, R is vastly greater than A. Responsibility vastly exceeds authority. See, in these complex AI systems, the substantive decision-making authority, the foundational design choices, the training data, the underlying software architecture, all of that is concentrated way upstream with the developers and the corporation. The frontline human operator, or even the consumer interacting with the bot, has almost zero actual technical authority or ability to control the AI's logic. And yet when it fails, that same human is routinely handed all of the responsibility. It's a fundamental unfairness built right into the system architecture. So how do we actually fix this? How do we build AI that augments our organizations without setting our people or our companies up for a massive fall?
Section 5. Returning humans to the loop. As the Air Canada case proved beyond a shadow of a doubt, courts are now holding companies strictly liable. You can no longer use a chatbot as a separate legal entity, and you absolutely should not be using your human employees as scapegoats to shield your corporate liability. We are in this new answer engine economy, and if your AI promises a discount, guess what? Your company just signed a binding contract. Trust is literally your only currency now. You cannot blame the machine when the machine is acting on behalf of your brand. You've got to design active governance directly into the system architecture. We have to keep humans strategically in the loop to validate and authorize high-stakes outputs before they cause harm.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought for today. As you look at the automated tools your own organization is deploying right now, ask yourself, when your AI inevitably fails, who's going to take the hit? Who is your crumple zone? Are you actually protecting your people with proper system governance, or are you just setting them up to absorb the crash? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and stay curious.